Hello everyone, this is Ian Schaefer here with UDA Technologies, and we are ready now to go ahead and get started with our first Lunch and Learn session to stay on track with Construction Online Scheduling. Joining me today here in the office is Holly Gipson, another of our senior product specialists.
Hi everyone.
And today we're going to be diving into some very specific details on how to put together a strong schedule, make sure that everybody knows where they're supposed to be, what they're working on, and then we can go into and work with a repeatable process with those schedules. Once we've found that recipe for success, let's make sure that we apply it. Now today, as we're looking into this as well, we'd appreciate any questions or comments that you guys have. This is a lunch and learn session, so we plan on being very, learn heavy in this particular webinar. We plan on teaching you guys a lot, and we want to make sure that if you guys have questions, you ask them. Take a look at the GoToWebinar panel. You'll find an area on there for questions, and we'll be fielding those questions both during the webinar and afterwards as well if you guys have any additional follow-ups. And we're focusing exclusively on scheduling today. And Holly, you were telling me earlier that scheduling tends to be one of the hot topics for a lot of work. Why don't you tell everybody about that as we're getting everything ready?
Yeah, absolutely. And it definitely does. Scheduling, I think, is one of the hottest topics I see when working with our clients, in particular when working with new clients, when they're looking for a solution to really help get their team organized, better manage projects. A lot of times really what that comes down to is scheduling and needing to really solve some of those puzzles of how to really plan effectively for a project, how to do that accurately, and then especially how to make sure everyone on the team can really see what is supposed to happen, when it's supposed to happen, that they're getting some of those reminders and notifications about it, and really just how to keep everybody on the same page for the project. And so scheduling really tends to be often one of the first places that people go and one of the first tools that they really begin learning how to work with when they're getting started in construction online.
Absolutely. And with 500,000 users managing, again, $75 billion worth of jobs, we find that some of the most critical things to get right is labor. Labor and figuring out where everybody needs to be and what they're supposed to be working on. Again, success starts with knowing where to be. And along those lines, let's go ahead and dive in and start taking a look at some of the features and the content that we have for you guys today. Now, we're going to start with one of the basic schedules that we have in Construction Online. What I've got is just a few tasks, and part of the reason why I want to start simple today is because, again, I've had the opportunity to work with thousands and thousands and thousands of companies, and I find that this is where everybody begins. And in fact, as we go through a lot of these, this is where most people start. Now, as we're looking in Construction Online and putting together these schedules, of course you guys have a number of different ways that you can begin these projects. If I go take a look at one of our empty jobs that doesn't have a schedule yet, you'll see the three main options for getting started. Now, most of us have a scheduling system like an MS Project, or some of you hopefully are using something like ConstructionSuite, which has the ability to generate one of these files as well. We start with import options here. But again, as we're looking at these, you guys have great options for getting started. Now, of course, there's an option here to pull in, again, as we were saying, from Microsoft Project. This gives you an option to just browse for and grab one of the files that you guys might want to pull if somebody's provided you with a schedule, or if you just have a great schedule that you guys have been using for years, and now that you're making the move into Construction Online, we need to just bring that with us. Perfect option to do that. Now, of course, for some of you guys, as you're uploading, you may be generating templates that we're going to be working off of, and this gives you the ability to go through and choose one of the scheduling templates. We're going to circle back to this a little bit later as we create some templates for you. But as we're working through this, most of us are going to be starting today from scratch. So we're going to be working with creating a blank schedule. And again, when you're putting this information together, the blank schedule that we're working with is going to provide you guys with just a clean slate. This implies, or what we're working on right now, is we don't have anything set in place yet, so we're going to build it. Today we're going to be working again with, which one did we say? Lot 187 Baldwin Park. Now I use this one because it's effectively clean. There's not a whole lot of information in here, and if we wanted to go through and start creating tasks for the schedule, it's a very, very simple process that has a number of options that are great for us to put the detail together. Now, the easiest option is to literally just click into one of these areas where you can enter the name of your next task, And as you click in and start typing the information in, you'll see these tasks popping up on the Gantt chart over on the right. Now, as you're building your first schedule, some of the key things to pay attention to on the left in the task information side are task names, maybe start dates, and as we expand this out or go to full screen, predecessors are going to be a big part of this as well. When you're building your schedule, these are the key components for getting everything lined up well. You guys want to know what you're working on, that's the task name. You want to know how long it takes, that's going to be the number of work days. And then you want to know what comes first and what comes after. This is where the predecessors come into play. And so as we're working through this information, again, enter in the information like apply for insurance, set the number of days that it would typically take to do that application, and then we just go into and connect it to its predecessor. That's going to be task number 4. Now again, what we're doing in this case is we're putting in more tasks, is we're just creating the chain of events on this job. It should always be very clear and very simple. We're not trying to create massive to-do lists in a single task and stretch it out, but we want to connect everything together so that it makes sense as we're flowing through the job. Again, as we add in more and more tasks, maybe the next one is going to be, let's say, site work. Once we get all of our insurance information done, we're going to start moving on to site work next. Again, how long do we expect it to take? Let's assume about 10 days perhaps. And then we'll move into the predecessor relationship again, which is going to be task number 5. Now, as we're kind of going through, just to catch back up, all we've done so far is add a couple of quick tasks here to the schedule. Again, if we wanted to add a few more tasks, maybe after site work, we're going to start working with foundations, so maybe we're going to do footers labor after the site work is complete. Again, key things to pay attention to as you're building your schedule is put in the name of the task, how long you expect that to take, and then the connector, the predecessor relationship here that we work with. Now, what you'll find with these predecessor relationships is there's 4 main types of relationship that you can have. And most of mine by default are going to be finish to start relationships. So here, as we're reading these, when we do apply for insurance, the predecessor relationship for finish to start is going to be connecting into lot costs. 5 finish to start connects into apply for insurance. 6 finish to start applies into more. You can actually find a fantastic tool to kind of go over these options and what they mean in the toolbar. So if you come up to and click on the toolbar and turn this on, under the view menu, you'll actually have a few different tools like a PDF that you can download that describe these relationships in a little bit more detail. And what you'll find is that little description that you have in that PDF also starts to describe these additional relationship types that we have here, like 2fs minus 7 would mean that when 2 is finished, we can start this task. In fact, we can start it 7 days earlier than 2 is finished. And that's what the minus 7 means. Plus or minus 7 just allows you guys to adjust those dates and durations and your start times as you guys are working through as well. So as you guys go through and take a look at this, again, the easy way to get the information together is just to click into and enter in a task name. Click into and set the number of work days that we plan on for this task, and then connect these things by predecessor relationships. Now, as you work through and get some of this information together, you'll also find down in the toolbar some easy options to insert tasks and milestones as well. Now this, again, tremendously useful tool because sometimes as you're building these things out, you might have skipped a step. We forgot something that we need to go into and insert at a later date. It's a very easy option to just click into the schedule where you need to insert the task. From the toolbar, the insert task option allows you to just slide one in right here. And then from here, you can just enter in the name for the new task that we're going to be working on and continue through your schedule as you need it. Now you'll also find with the new Construction Online the ability to right-click and use a lot of the options here as well. So if you guys don't have the toolbar showing, or if you're working on a smaller screen, like a Surface Pro, Holly, you've got one of those right here in front of you. If you're working on something like a Surface, maybe some of these additional options will work well. The Surface includes a pen that has some options for doing right-clicks in there as well. So that's a fantastic tool to work with if you guys have one of these available, or if you're just working on a computer screen and you like the right-click option, it's here. It's right here, available for you guys as well. Now again, this process for putting together the schedule, as you can see, it doesn't take too terribly long, and if you guys wanted to work within this a little bit, you can easily go through and add more tasks, either quickly or, again, thoroughly as you're working through here. And if you don't know exactly when we want to start yet, or if you need to make some adjustments, you can even do this over on the Gantt chart as well. So if you wanted to drag some of these tasks around on the Gantt chart, it's an easy process to, once again, find the right date or kind of work with your feel as you're going through the schedule itself. You'll know what's right when you see it or when you set it. And as you're working through this, if you're working on the Gantt chart and you prefer the drag and drop, it's extremely easy to operate with in this case. If you're very data heavy and you're data minded, as you're working through, you can also just type away on the keyboard and tab across to get into your next cells and work from there as well. Now, rather than making you guys sit here and listen to me clack away on the keyboard, I'm going to switch at this point into a schedule that's a little bit more complete. We have one under the Creekwood Country Estate that starts to expand on some of the details that we have available within the scheduling platform here. And what you'll find in the Creekwood Country Estate, again, we're going to go back to full screen, buttons right here. Close that toolbar for the moment. What you'll find with the Creekwood Country Estate schedule that I have here, most of the tasks that we're going to work with are available in here. Now we just need to go through and make sure that everybody is comfortable starting at the right times as we're going through. Now, Construction Online has a fantastic tool for this too. It's actually an option over on the left side under the stoplights. So we've got a new stoplight system available in here as well, and as we're going through and confirming our start dates with our subcontractors or our tradespeople, or making sure that the customer's going to be out of the way if we're doing a remodeling project, we can easily go through and say, yes, this one looks like it's going to be starting on time, these ones are going to work. But if we start to have a more questionable situation in this case, maybe we use the stoplight system to represent that we need to be a little bit cautious about getting these tasks together. Or again, some of these, maybe we haven't gotten it delivered yet, or we're behind schedule or something like that. So again, stoplights, fantastic tool just for a quick at a glance to make sure that we've got everything that we need. Otherwise, as you can see as we're navigating through this, all you have to do to get to the right place is click on the item that we're going to be working with, move on to the next set as well. Again, as we're kind of clicking through, you can see that the Gantt chart is snapping us to the right location so that we can get all the information together. Now, this is a very task-heavy schedule. As we're looking at this one, again, we're looking at things like I've got all my insurance information in there. We've got the restrooms being delivered. We've got, again, as we get down into site work and footers and foundation work, we've got material deliveries on here as well. We also include a number of inspections in here as well, and the inspections tend to show up as milestones on the Gantt chart. These green or potentially red diamonds, the milestones are always designed to be a simple way to get something like an inspection or maybe a payment milestone into the schedule so that we can track these important events and timelines. Now, Holly, there's an option in the client view that ties into this too, in fact. Would you mind just taking a second to go over that too? I've got one client that we're working with here. So why don't you tell us for a moment, Holly, how those milestones are going to tie in maybe for a customer view or help drive their client selections, perhaps?
Yeah, that's right. So when we're working with the schedule and putting that together, it's important to kind of think about, as you're building your schedule, this is going to be a great organizational tool for you and your team. So that's where we're looking at building and adding in those tasks. There's some great options that you see here for framing, for creating groups out of like tasks. So if you have like a group here for foundation tasks, you may want to group all of those together. So some really great organizational tools. The milestones really serve as that for you and your team as well. I often see people use milestones for those inspections. I also often see people use milestones to represent payments sometimes along the way during a project. So a lot of great ways that you can use those. And one thing to keep in mind is that when we are sharing the schedule through our client portal, if you're giving your clients a way that they can come in and you're wanting them to be able to see the schedule, you can allow them to see the entire schedule, so we can let them see the whole thing and really keep them up to date with every task that you have on here and where it stands. Sometimes you may want to restrict that information a little bit, and milestones are another great way to do that because there is an option within that client portal to only share those milestones. So as you're setting up the milestones, important markers along the way for projects, important inspections, or perhaps payments, you may just have it so that your clients are only seeing those milestones, which really keep them up to date and involved with the project without having to see those granular details of every single task. So that's a really, really great option when working with clients for sure.
Yeah. And to build on that too, not only can you adjust what your customers are able to see, you can kind of control their expectations a little bit with those milestones, which I'm a huge fan of.
Yeah, that's right. The other thing that the milestones allow you to do when you're working with your clients is you can actually link those to selection choices. So for certain types of projects, if you are using our selections feature to kind of keep your clients on track as far as material selections or packages that they need to make a decision on, when you set up those selections, you are able to assign just a static due date, but if you'd like, you can also create a link so you can have the selection due date also be an actual milestone that you've already set up on the schedule here. So if you're looking at something like perhaps those windows and doors, you need some selection decisions on that for your client. If we have those set up as milestones in the system, then when you create that selection for them, then you're going to have the option to actually tie that milestone to the selection so that those two are linked.
Yes, and in this case, it's an easy process. Again, you can just right-click where you'd like to add that milestone, select New from the right-click menu, select New Milestone, obviously, and in this case, just label it accordingly. So this would be, again, to your point, Holly, Windows and Doors selection, perhaps. Windows and Doors selection. This makes it easy for us to find in that drop-down list as we're putting together our selections. So naming is really smart here. It's a key piece to pay attention to. And as you're putting those selections in, one of the major differences between a milestone in this case and just the selections or the tasks themselves, rather, the tasks all have a positive duration. How many days are we going to be working on these tasks? Selections are pinpoints in time. So they always have a 0-day duration or a 0 workday limit here. So as you're going through that information and you're adding those selections in, or the milestones in, for your selections, again, right-click, go to New Milestone, and then just label it accordingly. This, when you go back to selections, we'll take a look at this in the series later as well.
Yeah,
just allows you to go through quickly and pull that information together.
Now, yeah, we have some great questions coming in about how to create those milestones. One other thing to keep in mind that's really great as you're working with ConstructionOnline Scheduling is that if you have any of these tasks, if you double click on the task, you are going to get this task details box. So this is going to allow us to enter in some additional information like your descriptions, status, type. So there's a lot of information that we can record here, but one of the things that you can also do is convert this existing task to a milestone. So if you find that you already have a schedule, you've put some things together, and participating in this workshop today, you're thinking, well, maybe that should actually be a milestone. There's a really easy way to go back and adjust any of your existing tasks and mark those as milestones. So you just open that up, go ahead and select the checkbox, and when we save that, it's going to now be a milestone on the schedule. Let's just put that back.
Thank you, Holly. Now you'll see too that as you guys are going through and making adjustments, it is that easy. If you're working with a computer or a laptop or something along those lines, again, all you have to do is just double click on the task to get into and adjust some of this information. And that might be start dates, it might be the durations or the number of work days that we're going to be working with. You might be coming into and setting these things up as milestones, or eventually we're going to be coming into and marking them as complete.
That's right.
But a few more key parts to the ConstructionOnline schedule that you'll have access to here include priorities, so we can track what's really important or perhaps what is less of a focus for us right now. You'll also be able to come into and set a status for these, which is a customizable drop-down list in this case too, to help us communicate this information back to our team. And we can also set up additional task types here as well. Again, customizable, so you can choose to apply these task types. Most of it is for the schedule. It's probably going to be field work or some semblance to field work, but you may also have some tasks that need to happen in office or for these milestones. Some of those are going to involve the design team. So we need to go through and tag them accordingly so that we can go through and filter and report off of this information later, so we know that we're getting the right list of tasks to the right group of people. Go ahead.
Well, so yeah, that's exactly right. Those customizable drop downs are great. One thing also that I wanted to show you guys when you're looking at this information that you have here, so we can get to that by double clicking those tasks. grabbing this task details box, so that gives you a lot of information to work with. One thing that I've found that people also really enjoy in Construction Online Scheduling is when we're looking at a little further down the road and we're wanting to really update the schedule, the list view also takes some of that additional information and puts it in a table. So, with this option, you do lose the Gantt chart, but for some of you who like working with more of a grid layout like this, and especially for someone coming in at the end of the day doing quick schedule updates, this is a really great view. You can come in and with these drop downs, adjust the priority, adjust the status, adjust percentage complete. So it's a really fast way to come through and just mark off things that have been done, or note that we're about halfway there on that particular task. So super easy way to keep updated. So if you like that additional information, but maybe don't want to drill into each task every time, the list view is a really great tool to use there.
Yes, it is. And it makes it much easier as well to do our updates from the field when we're working with something like, again, a Surface Pro, for example. It just makes it much simpler to review. Or at the International Builder Show when we were there last month, we also had a partner of ours there with an iPlan table. He actually had some of the plans laid out, but he had a side screen associated with that, which was that list view for the schedule. And it was a fantastic tool because you could see everything that you were supposed to be working on, when it was supposed to happen, while we were focused on the plan. It was just fantastic. Now, to add to this, we also have some of the questions coming through about groups. So some of you guys have a sharp eye. You saw that in this schedule in particular, there is a group for framing. Now, grouping is an excellent way to kind of organize the information together a little bit. Most importantly, when you're looking at a lot of tasks like this, you can set up groups, again, through the right-click menu, go to New, and add a new group in here. But you can set up these groups so that as we're completing tasks or organizing the information, you can collapse the group down and get several tasks out of the way all at one time, so that we can set it aside and again, continue working through the body of that schedule itself. Now, to give you an idea of what a schedule might look like that's full of groups, we actually have another one here as well under Lot 185 Baldwin Park. We'll pull this up and then go back to full screen. And so here we have several groups organizing the information a little bit better. So what you can see in this case is if we're finished making all of the updates and the connections with planning, we can collapse this down, move on to foundation, where we can start to see some of the great detail here for the foundation schedule. And then once we're done with all those updates, collapse it down, move on to framing, and so on. Now, if you are creating groups and you wanted to modify some of the information available within these, again, the right-click menu is king. From here, you can actually indent and outdent tasks. So if we put it in the wrong place, you can outdent it to hop it out of the group, maybe move it down a little bit, and then indent it to get it into the correct group. You can also go through and edit some of the details from here too. But again, that right-click menu, one of the newer features available in Construction Online, has been hugely impactful for everybody who's working on these things as well. It's probably been, at least from the customers that I've talked to, it's been the number one addition to Construction Online by a fair shot.
Yeah, I think it makes working for sure so much easier to have just different options for being able to work with this information really quickly. I'm a right clicker. That's kind of my go-to, really, whatever I'm working in. So it's great to see that on a web program available here. Another quick question I wanted to address. I see some, again, really great questions from you guys coming in today. One more before we move on to kind of our next section here in today's workshop. We did have a great question come in to ask, does the percent completion update on its own as the time elapses, or is that something that needs to be manually updated? So the short answer is that's going to be something that needs to be manually updated. Now, the reason for that is because we do have some tools for allowing you to be able to see sort of elapsed time versus a percent completion, which is a great tool for you to look at where we should be versus where we actually are. So what we don't want the system to do is, just because October 24th has passed, assume that we actually got the work done. So we want to use the schedule as a tool, not just to plan the project, but to really update and communicate about the status of the project. And that's going to require someone on site to come in and say, yes, we actually did finish this. We can check that off as complete and know that it's done. So it's actually going to be a great tool for you to be able to see, okay, where are we supposed to end this task? You know, we're a couple of days beyond that end date, so we should be seeing a 100% complete here and yet I'm not seeing that. So that's a great tool for you to be able to then reach out to that project manager or site supervisor, whoever's managing the schedule, and get that update so that you can track what should happen versus what actually is happening.
Yeah.
Now
Go ahead.
Oh, well, I was just going to say, one way to really make it more likely that your tasks are going to actually be completed on time is to make sure that everyone knows about them and that everyone knows who's responsible for the task, when it is supposed to happen, and that information is communicated out to the team. So, of course, one of the great things about Construction Online being a collaborative platform, as we've already discussed, is really we can share this schedule in real time with everyone. It's designed for your entire project team to be able to access and see that. You can share it with clients and with subcontractors through your Client Link and Team Link portals. But one thing you also really want to look at doing as you're setting the schedule up is taking advantage of setting up reminders for these tasks as well. So if we, again, go back and double click, pull up the details for this task, electrical labor, you'll notice that we have some additional tabs running along the top here. And this is where we're really going to look at adding some of that additional information onto our scheduled tasks. Now, side note, before we look at reminders, one thing to keep in mind is that as we're assigning resources, if you're also using the game plan tool, assigning the resource on the task level is going to add that task to that user's game plan. So that's something I hope you guys are taking advantage of. But for right now, we're going to look at how to set up those individual reminders for your resources. So the first thing that we'll want to do is actually assign a resource. So we will, let's see, Ian, you don't have me in here.
No, because you assign me all the tasks, Holly. I don't give you things. Use Bill.
So let's use Bill. We'll go ahead and assign Bill as a resource for our task here. So what this is doing is letting the system know that Bill is the person that we expect to get this task done for us. He's responsible for it. So typically this is going to be, the subcontractor or trade or whoever on your team is actually going to be performing the work. You know that your project managers are kind of ultimately responsible for manning the whole schedule. But here we really want to be specific with who we expect to complete this resource. And then once we've done that, we can come over to our reminders tab and begin adding reminders that those resources are going to get either by email or by text, whichever you prefer. So that way they are kept up to date as far as when the task is going to start. And one thing that's actually unique and really great about Construction Online and the reminder system that we have for you here is that you'll notice there are several different types of reminders that you can set. That way they're not just getting a text once and forgetting about it, but we can actually create, say, a planning reminder that we might want to go out 10 days prior to our task, but we may want to do a starting reminder that's going to come out a couple of days ahead of time, or you can really customize that and have it do whatever you'd like. You can adjust the number of days ahead of the task the reminder is going to happen. So if for you that needs to be 2 weeks out, you can do your planning reminder at 2 weeks or 1 week or whatever makes sense for you. And then you can also CC yourself on the reminder here as well.
Mm-hmm. And it gives you a fantastic space where you can customize the details for the reminder too. In this area, you can actually expand upon what needs to happen for this. And in most of our cases, this might be an area where you would say, if you have questions, contact the project manager or something along those lines. Otherwise, the information does provide for your resources in this case, all the core details for the project, the start time for the job. It's a fantastic reminder for everything that you guys put on the schedule, and it updates with the task as well. If you'll notice in this case, we're not setting the reminder for a specific date. It's always going to be linked into that task, which means that if you do take the time to put together great messages like these, all of that information could be put together in a schedule template perhaps, that you then take and apply across several different jobs, and you never have to go back up and update it again. All you have to do in the future is just make sure that the right people are on the right jobs, and then those reminders are going to take care of everything else for you.
Exactly. Well, and the reminders are smart. So, as you're adjusting things, the reminder is going to adjust with it, which means that they're great not just for when the project is starting, but really for active management as you're moving along there.
Mm-hmm. Now, there was a question as well regarding updating the schedule and do other tasks move with these as well. This is another part where having those smart reminders is really, really useful. If you're working in a schedule and the schedule has all of your tasks linked together with predecessor relationships and you move one, all the subsequent tasks, everything linked in, will follow that back through time. It updates and adjusts accordingly. So as you need to take a look through, you guys will actually find a lot of that information in there as well. And it's going to auto update and adjust accordingly as well if you guys need that information in place. So as we're putting together these reminders and we're looking at the assigned resources and we're updating our tasks and adjusting the schedule, you can see all of that information updating. The reminders will update to send out at the right times and everything like that as well.
Yeah, that's right. That's exactly right. So it's super important to, invest a little bit of time up front to get the schedule laid out the way that you want it, the way that you need for the actual project to happen. And then to know that, take 5-10 minutes every day, make sure that it's updated, because it really is a dynamic tool for keeping everyone on track.
Mm-hmm. And we actually have a great follow-up question to that one as well. Holly mentioned earlier that we have the ability to set up game plans. And a game plan, of course, is going to go through all of your schedules and all of your to-do lists and punch lists and RFIs and everything that you guys are working on. And it's going to gather up all of the information assigned to a specific individual, like in this case, Bill, or Holly sends me one every day. And it's very
You're
large.
welcome.
But what that game plan is going to do is it's going to gather up all that information and give the resource an outline for what they're going to be doing big picture-wise, a big list. Setting up, especially those planning reminders, is a great addition to this. Using both the game plan and those planning reminders allows you to get the best of both worlds. You can set up those planning reminders so that they get that good advance notice, and then when their game plan shows up every weekday perhaps, then they start to get the specific details for what they're working on the job, but they've planned for it because, again, the planning reminder helped them remember what they're supposed to be working on. What I find most interesting about that as a feature set available here in Construction Online is whenever we bring on new builders, new partners in construction, I find that almost all companies have somebody on staff that spends a day or two every week just calling the subs to let them know where they're supposed to be, what they're supposed to be doing. Between the game plans and these reminders that we're configuring and setting up, they eliminate the vast majority of that need, so that person that you have on staff that might be doing that right now can instead do something far more productive with their time, which could be anything. It could be reaching out to and talking to new prospective clients. Maybe it's following up on some of the details for the job. Maybe it's sending out reminders to your own team to put in their daily logs. But there's a world of possibilities, and with an extra 2 or 3 days a week, just imagine what more we could accomplish. And with tools like Game Plan and those planning reminders, you have that. You have those free days now to go do whatever you want.
That's the goal, and that's really the benefit of investing that time up front to build that schedule. Now, when we think about keeping a schedule on track and finishing on time, Ian, I know one of the things that you will often be a really big proponent of keeping an eye on is the critical path. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Absolutely. And actually, I'm glad that you came into this schedule as well, because first of all, the critical path is Construction Online's way of identifying which tasks require the most scrutiny over the course of the job. Because what Construction Online does to build that critical path is it goes to the end of the schedule and it calculates its way back through the schedule to figure out which tasks, if delayed, would delay everything on the whole job. And so what we've done here in this case, by turning on the critical path, or by highlighting the critical path here, is we're showing you which ones you need to pay particular attention to make sure that you can meet your contract deadlines that you've set up. Now, in order to get this, of course, once again, if we open up the toolbar and we take a look here under the View menu, you can actually highlight or hide the critical path here. The system will automatically calculate this for you every time, and it is based on predecessor relationships, so it's very crucial for us to be able to see what that path looks like by connecting all of these tasks together. Then when you highlight the critical path, you and everybody on your team knows what those key elements are, which are the most important links in this chain. In this case, for example, if we hit a delay getting financing, according to our critical path, that's not much of a problem. The whole job's not going to go late because of this. But if we did delay something like design services, well, this is something a little bit more important. When we delay this task, everything else is going to update, and now we're a couple of days further behind. Now, what I particularly love about this is, as we're looking at something like these dashboards here for the schedule progress, as an example, this is actually going to help pull some of that detail together, and it's going to show you, again, we were talking about this earlier, it's going to show you where we were supposed to start, where we're supposed to be right now, and if you compare this with the critical path, you might see where those delays have impacted us so far as we're looking through some of these progress tools. Now, the other kind of key elements that we're looking at, I'm going to go back to full screen on this one again. Some of the other key elements that we're looking at here with the critical path, again, if we're following this through, you can see where these predecessor relationships are linking all of the tasks together. In this case, if we're following the critical path, just follow the red lines. It's almost like the yellow brick road in this case, but as we follow those red lines, you can find which of these tasks are going to be most important for us to pay attention to. And you can kind of see the life of this job by following that critical path all the way to the end. Here's the next one. And again, you'll just be able to kind of follow this as we continue on through until hopefully what the last task is in this case would be something along the lines of final punch list or closeout or handoff, something along those lines. But again, as long as everything is connected, as long as we have those relationships in place as we do on this job, then the schedule itself is going to be helping us identify all of these important areas so that we're not late, so that we can meet our obligations in this case for the job itself.
Now, another of the questions that we had coming in, really looking at the critical path and the individual task and where we're standing with those. We also had a great question to come in to say, well, where can we just get an idea of the overall schedule, the overall project, how complete is it? And of course, the critical path, as you kind of scan through your schedule, is a great way to see that. The dashboards that we built into Construction Online, this is where you really start to use some of that information and those updates that you've put in and start to see the bigger picture for your schedule as well. So you'll notice in your dashboard, when you have that expanded, you have really a couple of sections here. The first one is going to be exactly that, helping us see overall schedule progress. So here we're able to look at how many workdays have elapsed versus the number of tasks completed. So again, when we think about if you put together a schedule and we have 170 days on the schedule, the elapsed workdays is just going to tell us how much time of that has passed, what is actually passed. Whereas the tasks complete are going to show us what's actually been marked off as 100% complete. So you want to compare those two, see where you're standing there. And then you'll notice also that on your overall timeline here at the top, all of your milestones are showing as well. So this will take us from the start date to the end date. You can see those milestones in between and get an idea of how far into the schedule you are here.
Now, we did also mention earlier that some of the schedules that we see from people coming in tend to be kind of large, kind of blocky. With this dashboard, tracking the schedule progress on workdays and tasks completed, you always want to make sure that everything has a good balance. Things like setting up a group for several tasks in framing makes more sense when you start to consider one of these dashboards because it helps break up what would otherwise be one really big task into several smaller measurable progress points in this case. And a dashboard like this helps us get that accomplishment and get a better measure for how things work, which again is one of the big reasons why grouping is important. But setting up several tasks instead of just one big one and hoping that the guys on the job site can figure out what we want them to do, you're communicating better by providing that additional detail, and the dashboards give you a better picture if you're breaking it up in that way too. So again, huge important pieces to do with that. Now,
well, before we move too far away from the dashboard, the other thing that you'll have here is another one of those tools that I really love in Construction Online Scheduling, which is our baseline tool. So this is one more tool that we have kind of in our toolbox here for being able to measure not only where we started and where we are now, but baselines really allow you to go in and measure the impact of changes that you're making over time.
And one of the interesting parts to Construction Online here is a baseline in Construction Online is going to function as a measure, almost a carbon copy, for where the schedule was at a specific date when you set that baseline. Now, as you're looking at the baseline dashboard, you can actually grab any of the baselines that you've created, and Construction Online gives you the ability to generate many baselines if you like. And as you're going through and comparing the baseline, you're comparing where we were with that baseline that you select, and you're comparing that to where we are now, either in the entire schedule, which is what we're seeing right now, or if you wanted to zoom in on a specific task or group of tasks, again, you can do that. You can select one task or a group in here. What we're seeing with these baselines is we're seeing how far behind schedule we are based on that original set. So it's going to be shifting these start dates and end dates, and it's a fantastic visual to show, again, where we've slipped perhaps on this job. Maybe the selections didn't come in time, so the job is now 17 days longer because we didn't know what doors to use, and that required that we held off on some of the other things, like we couldn't start with flooring because we still didn't have doors on the house. Maybe we weren't comfortable getting those in. Or maybe the customer is bringing in some outside help for things like flooring options, and we don't want to paint everything while the flooring guys are in there. There's a number of different reasons why these delays might happen.
That's right. One common reason for that, and I see, again, great questions coming in, but, a common enough reason for that is inclement weather. I know, where we live, we're in the southeast section of the U.S., we sometimes will have things like, a hurricane or something like that during a certain season, or I know kind of no matter where you are, you've got different weather events that may happen. I know a lot of us were seeing blizzard conditions across the country over the last couple of weeks. These are things that are definitely going to cause delays with your jobs. And so this is a great way, we want to do two things when we run into those weather delays. One is, of course, we want to log and document those. And so we would recommend that you do that in our project logging tool. So we'll be looking at that in another session. But when it comes to your schedule, a great way to manage that is to go ahead and set a baseline before you make any changes. Then make your changes, and you'll be able to measure the impact of that specific weather event by comparing that baseline to where you actually end up.
And again, this is going to give you a number of great tools, but one of the most impactful things that you'll get with those baselines is a good demonstration area for what delays could cause as an overall impact for the job. Now again, if we're looking at something like the critical path down on the schedule itself, and all we have right now to look at is where we are currently, we lose the ability to describe what simple delays might cause for your customers over the course of the job. Using those baselines and using some of the reports that you can generate with those baselines, you paint a better picture. Again, this is all about communication and tracking in this case. We can see what's happened and what the results are from what the customer might think is a simple 1 or 2 day delay, which could cause a cascading effect over holidays or something like that, that actually results in 2 or 3 weeks of delays. They're not thinking about that when they say, well, just come talk to me tomorrow. Again, so this helps paint that picture and helps everybody understand what's happening much, much better as we work. Don't forget, too, as you're looking at those baselines, the left side is the baseline that we're comparing it to. That's where we were. The right side is the specific task on where we are now that you guys want to compare against, either the entire schedule, a group of tasks, or an individual task or milestone within the job.
Now we are coming up pretty close to the top of the hour. We want to wrap up for you guys. But before we do that, one other thing that I wanted to make sure that we had a chance to take a look at, it's a common enough question. There's some really great options for you guys, is really, as we're working on our schedule collaboratively and everyone's logging in and accessing that information, one thing that we also want to take a look at is, what if we need to print this up? How can we do that? So the great thing is with Construction Online, you do have a number of schedule reports that you can use here. I know one of you guys had a question earlier about can we create a work order from the schedule. So, many of our clients use those game plans as digital sort of automated work order system that's going to get out to those subcontractors. But if you need to go ahead and print up a work order, Construction Online does an excellent job of allowing you to use the information you've already entered on your schedule, create a report, print that up, and that way you can put it in the hands of a client or in the hands of a worker, someone who needs to actually complete the work. You also have great reports in addition to the work order for things like schedule completion. So this allows us to, this is a great one for a client. So we can really give a start and end date and then be able to produce a report of all the tasks that have been marked as complete within that certain time frame, so that we can look at, hey, what was completed for maybe the month of March so far, something like that. The baselines that we were just looking at have a great report that you can generate. So again, if you're using that to measure the impact of impact of the weather, impact of some of those client changes, this is a great way to actually produce a great report off of that as well, so that you've got something you can actually hand off to someone.
Mm-hmm. And as you're going through and you're working with some of the additional resources available within the schedule, and I say resources, thinking in this case the people, as you're assigning out those resources in your schedule, you'll also have the ability to generate on the bottom left here a scheduling conflict report as well. And that just helps highlight where we've got a small handful of people working across multiple jobs, perhaps. They might have simple tasks to work on, but it's a great way to highlight any of those potential conflicts to, once again, avoid those delays that might be cropping up. These reports that are available within Construction Online Scheduling, all of these different reports, they're a fantastic way to take what is otherwise maybe a large chunk of data and really focus in on what you need to communicate to your staff to give them the right idea on the direction that we need to go as a team moving forward, either on this job or on all of our jobs or anything, really, any form of direction sense. These reports help tremendously with those options. Now, to add to that too, don't forget, as you guys are setting up your customer portals or your subcontractor portals through TeamLink and ClientLink and TeamLink respectively, you'll also have the ability to share parts or all of these schedules as well. With ClientLink, I find most people will tend to set up the milestones as the part that they share. For TeamLink users, it tends to lean towards just sharing the tasks that are assigned to them. But for everybody that you work with, you can also step into the calendar and filter down to a resource to see what everybody's responsibilities are for everything. We're starting to get big picture in this case because we can see where each individual has tasks that they're working on. And from this calendar, which apparently today I chose hot pink.
I see that, yeah.
But as we're going through and setting this up, you guys can go through and customize a lot of the information. But most importantly, you can see where everybody's supposed to be here on Construction Online proper or through the mobile app when you guys are pulling up the details for this too. All of this information shows up, not just in the schedule, but also in a calendar view, which is, for a lot of us, far easier to read.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, when we come in and create a schedule for the project, that's really critical. We want to do a great job, and you really want to use those tools like the Gantt chart and all of the options you have available on the task to really be able to control that process, set the right expectations, really set that project up for success. It doesn't mean that the Gantt view or working with that type of software, for your client, that really may not be what they want to see. And so one great thing here is that everything that we put on the schedule is going to automatically get that on the project calendar as well. And then when it comes to sharing, we're picking and choosing, are we sharing the entire schedule? Are we sharing none of it? Are we sharing just part of it? And for your purposes, not only do you have the schedule for this individual project, of course, it's going to be on the project calendar. All of these schedules, so any Gantt chart that you put into the system is also going to come and be a part now of your company calendar. So, another common thing that, I'll talk to people about when they're getting started with Construction Online is that when we're doing that, pretty common, people will tell me, I need everything in one place. I need a place where I can see everything in one place. And this company calendar is to me, one of the best areas to see that from a timeline perspective, especially. So when we come to the company calendar, we're going to see, any of those Gantt charts that you've put together for your project are going to show up here. They're going to show, of course, in the project color. So if you are color coding, you can have, kind of a quick read on what's happening for each job. We can click here and get just a little more detail about that task. And again, filter that down by a resource. This company calendar is going to not only include the Gantt chart, but any other items. Like you'll notice I've got the milestone here for a foundation inspection. We can also show on the calendar things like deadlines for change orders or selections, anything else that you've really set a date for. And you've got several different views to choose from here, whether that be looking at the month, maybe we want to look at the entire week, or even if you prefer just a list view, you've got a great agenda view here. So a lot of different ways to view that information that you've now put together on that schedule, not only for you, but for different team members who may be accessing this as well.
Yeah, and along those two, I do want to leave you guys with a few last tricks. Can't help you with that last question that came through, but some of the last notes to work on here. When you are working through these schedules, it's always a good practice to go back and review the schedule once the job is complete to make sure that everything was mapped out well. Now, if you do go back into one of these jobs and you're doing that end of project review, which probably includes looking at your estimate versus actuals, it probably includes checking your initial start for this, the initial baseline for the job versus where we finished that project. As you're going through and reviewing that, when you make the adjustments and you find that this schedule is the right schedule, it's the perfect result that you want to work with in the future, you can also come into the toolbar in this case. Once again, click on the toolbar to show the toolbar, and in the new menu, you can create templates based off of this schedule. Now you can copy it as well, but I find that creating the template is your best option because it makes it very easy to then apply this on future projects that are very, very similar. And as you do use this option to create the schedule, it gives you some, create the template rather, it gives you some easy options to clear out very job-specific information, like maybe the resources, if we don't want those to come through. Percent complete, of course, I don't want to include that. But maybe we do want to leave the reminders in place, the duration for the tasks and the predecessors, because maybe this is a model home that we're going to build again many times. With this template, it's an easy way to kind of pull this information together and set it up so that we can do that regularly. Now, to add to that, if we do use this schedule on another job, or we use this as a template, the task menu and the tools menu will give you some additional options here for cleaning up some of the details. But from tools specifically, it's very easy to come through on this schedule template and shift it to the right start date and adjust the work days so that we can account for or accommodate our client holidays or working time that we're going to set up. Or again, if we're having to finish this job particularly quickly, maybe we come into and add Saturdays and Sundays as working days so that we can finish faster. Again, you've got a lot of fantastic options here in this tools menu to be able to get that additional customization on the schedule so that you can really convert this into something that will work for you every time instead of having to work within the boundaries of what is a common work schedule. I find that these kind of things are really, really helpful, especially if you guys do any form of kind of unique work. We've got a few clients that do work in like medical facilities, which are running almost all the time, but they tend to have peak building hours in the middle of the night. So they had to adjust a lot of their information to get it right. We also have some other clients up in New York City who work heavily in the Jewish community. And so they have to make sure that they add in all of the Jewish holidays so that they can respect their clients, which they have. And that also allows them to get more similar clients, more of those ideal clients that they really want to bring in, that they're comfortable working with. It just, again, that mutual respect in that case, helping to observe their holidays or respecting their holidays makes it really easy to bring in their friends. And so that's one of the ways that they found it was really, really helpful. So you can go in here and set additional holidays or custom holidays, and all of that information will factor in as we're working through the schedule.
Yeah, that's right. I know, many of you that I've worked with over the years will do things like a Founders Day, picnic sometimes for your, for your team, or there may be, just different holidays, things like that you want to observe. One other thing to note in Construction Online is that not only can we really easily create a custom holiday. So this is something that our schedule would register as a non-work day. But for our international clients, we are serving, at this point, over 600,000 of you in, I think, 75 different countries all over the world. So we've accounted for that as well. So, of course, we're located here in the U.S., so that's what this account looks like. But if you're in a different country, you do have kind of a standard set of holidays to pull from, no matter the country, so that you can kind of have that specific to your location. Or, if you're doing a project somewhere else, you could, certainly account for that there.
And again, in this case, it just allows you to go in and select which holidays you're going to observe or you're going to work through. Again, giving you the ability to define what your company works like instead of having to follow any of the other scheduling norms. Mm-hmm. So you really have lots and lots of control over what your work looks like and how you guys are able to provide a bigger, better picture. Now, along those lines, I believe that that's actually going to have to be our wrapping point today. We are out of time. Funny that we're working on scheduling here and we've run out. But we do have some great questions that we're going to definitely kind of come back to and touch base on. Conveniently, in this case, we have most of your contact information. If you guys do have any outstanding questions or you'd like to review any of this information, don't forget, first of all, that this webinar has been recorded and it will be available on YouTube very shortly. We're also going to be continuing this series of webinars with the Lunch and Learn sessions. I believe that our next session is going to be 2 weeks from today.
That's right. So with our new Lunch and Learn series, Ian and I will be available for you guys every other Wednesday. We have some great topics planned over the next few weeks, but we really are committed, of course, to your success and have put together this Lunch and Learn series as a way of diving into these specific topics and features, giving you guys some additional tools for really using Construction Online and ConstructionSuite well. So we will be back 2 weeks from today for our next session, which will focus on estimating in Construction Online. And then 2 weeks after that, April 17th, we will dive into quality assurance and audits and really how you can manage that quality process in Construction Online as well.
Again, definitely going to tie some of those pieces in together as well with that schedule and that estimate and going over some of those best practices. The natural close on those is to make sure that everything went well. And so 4 weeks from today,
that's right.
We'll kind of be tying everything in together. Hopefully we can see you guys again every couple of weeks. And for today, though, I think that's going to wrap for us. Hopefully all of you guys had a fantastic lunch, and I think we're about to take off to go take care of that ourselves. But until next time, guys, thank you so much for joining us. Once again, my name is Ian Schaefer, one of the Senior Product Specialists here at UDA Technologies. And joining me today was Holly Gipson, another of our Senior Product Specialists here at UDA. And hopefully, guys, this has been a great learning experience for you, and we can't wait to do it again in 2 weeks. Yeah. We'll see you then.
Thank you guys for spending some time with us today. Have a great afternoon.
All right. Take care, everyone.